The North American continent has consistently produced the fastest of all time. Canada, the US, the Caribbean, Mexico. But curious fact, when the Jamaican sprint dominance began in the mid-noughties, the weights facilities on the island were pretty primitive. The Eastern Bloc philosophy sees weights and track as being very different. Athletes become proficient weightlifters. They get shoes, straps and other weightlifting gadgets. They could hold their own in a regional weightlifting competition. And the Americans and British have all smelt those salts. Let's not code for drugs. The Jamaicans are focusing on communist acceleration and maximal speed teachings, but the facilities lend themselves to a more relaxed attitude towards weight training, let's say. To them, it's a resistance in the pursuit of sprinting, not a goal in itself. Athletes, whatever the nationality, that pursue it as a goal in itself, find themselves slitting a chicken's throat and signing with Lucifer. If you've got excellent biomechanics and you happen to choose exercises that complement you, then it'll work. But this numbers game method leaves a lot of athletes on the scrap heap. If you get it wrong, exercise selection, load, volume, etc., the best you can hope for is poor performance. More likely, it comes at the cost of imbalance, rapidly followed by injury. And those that just aren't very serious about the iron they lift in the weights room, but are deadly serious about the track work, tend to fare better. The problem is, it contradicts the sound bites of working hard, being diligent, putting in the hours, ticking off the sessions. But these phrases are riddled with so many examples of, well, they're not doing that and they get results. Or, everyone's doing that. That kind of makes you wonder. Doing what works for you is the only thing that produces consistent results across the board in any field. Hey, disprove me by finding me the person that gets the results by not doing what works for them. If I was a conspiracy theorist, then I'd say that those other soundbites are put out there to confuse people and keep them down. But I actually think that those that succeed just have a distorted perception of the factors that are involved in their success. But I digress. It's not because weights are bad. I mean, a tool in itself has no morality. It's because weights can be extremely potent. What? You have to understand exactly why you're doing the exercise that you're doing. What the exercise is going to do for you specifically, how to do the chosen exercise in the best way for your biomechanics individually, and you have to weigh up the pros and cons of the type of strength that you're trying to achieve with it. Weights is like adding seasoning. The right amount and c'est magnifique. But if you're just running through the condiment shelf sprinkling, better to leave it bland. But also, be prepared to add the same amount of spice as last time and it just not taste the same. I'll never forget the total look of confusion on Johnny's face when his weights were exactly the same as a year before and yet it just didn't happen for him in that final. I think it was World Championships 99. Back to weights. Take the deadlift. What are you trying to achieve? What's the point? How are you doing it? To lift the most weight, that might include upper back rounding to shorten the distance travelled, or hitching. Or are you doing it with more knee bend, which is more of a squat pattern and more quad activation, and so therefore less upper back loading? There are really good reasons to deadlift, but if you don't know what they are, then you're just pulling blind. And just to get stronger isn't a great reason for sprints. Hashtag just saying, if I'm stronger, I'm more powerful, therefore faster. Hashtag 10 dead. Okay. How fast do you think the strongest deadlifter in the world is? There are plenty of ways to get strong. I'm asking, is deadlift a good choice? To me, this is a good reason to deadlift. Trying to get your femur heads back so you can get more glute activation when you sprint. But that requires you to deadlift in a particular way. Let's look at squat. What squat technique are you using? High bar, low bar, half squat, below parallel, ATG, back squat, front squat, overhead squat, narrow, sumo, and why to all these? These all have vastly different impacts on you, depending on who you are. They're all pros and cons and trade-offs. High bar back squat keeps you more upright and therefore more quad dominant. But if you're high bar back squatting and front squatting and sprinting, you're overloading that squat complex. If you go half squat, You need less skill, but you need more weight to get that activation, and you get more knee and low back stress. If you go ATG, it requires more skill, but less weight, keeping your glutes longer, which reduces stress on your hamstrings. You have less knee issues, but you require more dorsiflexion. But if you sprint, you're probably going to be plantar flexion dominant. So now you've got to wedge the heels, which displaces the weight forward and puts more strain back on the knees. How important's the lunge pattern to you? What are you trying to achieve when you do it? What are you trying to accentuate biomechanically? Is it a front foot or a rear foot exercise for you? And secondly, what's the ratio relationship of the squat, the bend and the lunge for you? Because they're all connected. And what's the difference on your biomechanical balance between, let's say, 100 walking lunges or 6x6 walking lunges at 40 kilos? Now these are like 10% of the considerations for just the hips, for just the exercise selection for the weights program. And that's before you even get to the ratios of hip flexion to hip extension to hyperextension, and then the range of movement, reps, sets, tempo, percentage intensity, etc. And it's because it's incredibly complicated that coaches tend to use a one-size-fits-all. And a one-size-fits-all means it suits the nation that either doesn't rely on it much or accounts for the multiple variables and the neural drain placed on the recovery systems. In terms of weights and sprinting, if you're following a weights routine because either others do it or it was just given to you, and you can't answer in depth the why and how of every single element in it, you're better off going old school. Buy a weighted vest and ankle weights and do body weight circuit training and sprint uphill and downhill. And be very conservative with bilateral barbell exercises. Stick to dumbbells and unilateral barbell exercises. Because once you start tampering and fiddling with the body balance, injuries are coming. But I also know that the allure of fast progress through maximal strength weights is enticing. Yeah, make me some enormous gains this winter. Then I can emerge next summer like a world force, dominate track. But it's a huge gamble that for most doesn't pay off. Hence, the contract with the devil. It's my personal belief that the best use of weights is neither maximal strength nor hypertrophy training for a sprinter, because these don't lead to a long career. Weights' best use is correcting the imbalance brought about by the actual sprint training that you do and reinforcing the correct patterns in the correct ratios to each other. But once again, inconveniently I'm out of time. Should have gone faster. Leave comments below, hit the thumbs up, and the next time you see someone trying to commit Harry-Carry under the bar, share it with them. And if you like my vibe, please subscribe. Woo! Woo!